This is a great opportunity for all of us to come through this platform and to reflect about the current crisis situation with regard to COVID-19. When we planned this series of webinars, of course, we thought that the Christian Conference of Asia should take the initiative to provide a common platform, especially in the context that the world is facing an unprecedented situation today due to the spread of the novel coronavirus ever since it broke out. So it is actually a loud wake-up call for all of us and all countries and all individuals in this planet that the proliferation of this COVID-19 as well as other epidemics since the beginning of the century have shattered many myths about threats arising from new pathogens and diseases that escalates as epidemics. The spread of COVID-19 all over the world has exposed the inadequacy and also lack of proper healthcare management systems, whether it is in a poor country or in an advanced country in the world. So it is in this context that we are called to reflect about the role of the churches and the faith communities. So churches all over the world, they have stepped up in services to vulnerable people and communities and have offered their support to those who are in need, irrespective of their church or denominational or faith affiliations or backgrounds. So here, through this virtual conference session, we are trying to understand what the churches in, or how the churches in Asia have been responding to this crisis situation. And that is why we have requested some of the church leaders, those who are actually taking leads in their respective context, or those who are directly involved in their respective contexts, to come together this common platform and share the experiences with a wider Asian Christian community.
Jesus is risen, truly he is risen. And by his resurrection, we all are trying to overcome the difficulties, sufferings that we are surrounded because of the COVID-19. No doubt that suffering from COVID-19 is unanimous, and the whole world is, so to say, is being handicapped by this small virus and imprisoned all the people in their homes. As Paul, Apostle, reminds us that sometimes sufferings, troubles that we are challenged by, give us hope and strengthen our faith. In his letter to the Romans, he says, "Let us find a cause of glorifying in our troubles, for we know that trouble produces fortitude, and fortitude produces character, and character produces hope, and hope does not prove an illusion, because the love of God has been poured out into our hearts through the Holy Spirit who has been given unto us." In Iran, of course, our people also, we always kept encouraging them in their faith and in their Christian existence. Because as Christians, we always think that the main weapon, the spiritual weapon that we can use is hope. Hope keeps us alive and attaches us to the life at the same time.
I feel this is the fifth great world pandemic that is tearing into the face of humanity today. My only hope and prayer is that, apart from our alleviation programs, the virus shall not enter into our minds. This is the time for the churches to come live and to be with the people and to serve the people as we define what Christianity is and what it is for. 80% of the population in India lives upon informal livelihood. Is a great challenge for all of us. And 60 million Indians are internal migrants. They move from one state to other. Now, what is happening in India today is reverse migration. People who are working in other states, they are returning, taking the hard way, sometimes walking for miles on end. And also from overseas, the reverse migration is on. People are coming back to India. That is a big problem. But the churches everywhere in India are seized of the issue. And every church, every parish is with the people because the state is controlling things. The churches cooperate with the state agencies and also other Christian agencies to see that the big problem faced by the population is to some extent alleviated. I can tell you with confidence that the national churches in India and every church in every state, council of churches, everybody is in the field. Churches are giving to the state, its halls, auditoriums, its hospitals, everything, for quarantine purposes, for isolation, for medical care, and everything. So I can assure you, my friends, though the difficulty, the problem is very big, luminous, the churches are all alert. They are coming out in big numbers with money, with whatever they can, to give food to the helpless people, to the migrants who are moving on the road, those who are quarantined.
In Pakistan, the situation is not that much bad when it started, but you know, it's when things not been controlled on borders and airports, so it's become more worse. And Church of Pakistan and Church in Pakistan, all churches as working with the government. The situation is it started from disease, lockdown, then fear, then economic crisis, food crisis, and the big one is psychological crisis when people are thinking what is going to happen. And Christians in Pakistan, they are on margin lines, and they are more affected because of this. The daily wages, especially in the rural areas, and job has cut down. When there is downsizing, the minorities come the first. Government has announced some subsidies, a SARS program, from which they can support the poor who has been suffered. But you know, it's not equal for everybody. Sometimes it's difficult, especially when Christians are they do the menial jobs, sweepers, and they don't have the right protective measures. It's not right now. It's been going on. So so church is doing its part, and especially the church has been closed down. They are the support of church, the economical condition of the church has gone down because church are completely locked, and the pastors are, because they are dependent on their visitation, and so it's a difficult situation. But the church is doing, by their local resources, they are helping each other. They are helping, they are caring, and they are sharing.
Experienced by various other countries. Although the death rate is not as high as other countries such as China, America, Spain, or Italy, but the impact of the pandemic is still heavy on other aspects, such as social, economic, and and others. When WHO declared COVID-19 as a global pandemic, the Communion of Churches in Indonesia, the National Council of Churches, immediately took it seriously. The church responded quickly by issuing some pastoral letters to member churches across Indonesia. Our pastoral letter contains a suggestion for keeping a safe distance, organizing a family-based worship, issuing a protocol for handling and burial the dead body of victim of COVID-19, as well as practical suggestion for maintaining cleanliness and healthiness. The development of the pandemic situation encouraged us as a church to develop more severe and strategic mitigation action. The church decided to form church task force on the national level against COVID-19 as a model for member churches across Indonesia. Regarding the immediate response, we are distributing food, vitamin, medicines, as well as financial assistance to church communities who are experiencing direct economic impact due to the development of this pandemic. At the next stage of handling the pandemic, member churches under the PGI have built up their task force and developed diaconal assistance among their congregations as well as across parishes. The diaconal movement cannot rely on church institutions as it usually done. In that situation, we encourage the development of family-based diaconal. Every family that has more staff can share it with other families in need. The church as an institution only facilitates to bring together those in need with those who want to contribute. So we play a role as a facilitator and mediator as well. In the current situation, the church has increased our mitigation strategy to food security activities. We encourage member churches to build food storage facilities according to their own capacity. We are building an online platform to develop small business between churches, at least done between churches in one region.
The time of this pandemic is something that we all face together here in Asia, as in the rest of the world. It is unprecedented. This pandemic, like the climate emergency, affects all, every person on the planet, regardless of other things that might divide us. One common response to the pandemic from the Roman Catholic churches in Asia has been to cooperate very closely with the health officials, national and local, and listening to what they say about the spread of the virus and the prevention of that spread. There has been a strong cooperation with the civil officials in following the guidelines that have been imposed on society for the good of all. Different conferences and countries were interested in what was said and what was being done in other conferences or countries. They felt that they were being brought together in closer bonds due to the need to respond to the outbreak by learning from one another. This also involved the listening to other ecclesial communities and their responses and plans in the face of the quarantines and lockdowns. Even though we were in the seasons of Lent, Holy Week, and Easter, with the general prohibition on large gatherings and social distancing, the churches canceled all public gatherings for celebrations. Although this was rather sudden and unfamiliar, at the same time, they responded by finding ways to use technology to provide live streaming of these events. Some were even able to use local TV stations. This brought a heightened awareness of the domestic church as a reality. Pastoral care of the sick, the holding of wakes and funerals, given the prohibition of gatherings and physical distancing regulations, are a challenge. There are also burial directives that have to be followed. These added burdens at these moments of grief and bereavement, and they're a pastoral challenge to offer true compassion. All through Asia, fervent prayer has been encouraged to intercede for the entire world and to save humanity from this pandemic.
The churches here in the Philippines, like in many parts of Asia, have also done its part to help meet the situation of our people, especially poor. We have been challenged by the rules that have been laid down during this lockdown. Unlike other calamities in the past, where we could operate quite openly and without restrictions, the lockdown has challenged our mobility, and there are new rules like getting permits to local government units, as well as regulations on bulk purchases. So to the extent that we are able to help, we had done that, like providing emergency relief assistance, whether they be in terms of food packs, hygiene kits, or even cash transfer. And we have encouraged our member churches, including the local parish levels, to help out in this because of the problem of mobility. What is heartening here is that there has been good cooperation among churches. For instance, there has been Roman Catholic seminaries that have opened their doors where the relief goods could be done. And so, like in one area, there's the Iglesia Filipina Independiente, the UCCP, with Roman Catholics working together to reach out to indigenous people's community. One other thing that we have been doing is the issuance of joint position or statements, pastoral letters on the issue, because what the churches here in the Philippines feel that the government has taken a more militarist or law and order perspective on this medical crisis, rather than concentrating primarily on the medical side. And there had been many arrests, including those who are doing relief and emergency operations.
United Church of Christ in Japan cannot ask all churches to close coronavirus because it is literally a united church. Whether or not a specific church suspends face-to-face worship service is left at the discretion of the churches. While some churches provide online worship service, a major concern is that elderly population is increasing and not all people have access to the internet connection. Therefore, document-based worship service is still an effective option for them. Nippon Seikokai and the Anglican Church in Japan in general has provided online resources for worship to the whole diocesan members since the beginning of March. The diocese suspended all public services on March 8th, but the project has commenced long before the suspension to provide an alternative way of worshiping for safety reasons. Basically, there are two types of resources: video recordings of the Eucharist, presided by the diocesan bishop, and text for having the service of the word at home. And finally, let me talk about my church, Japan Evangelical Lutheran Church. The East District, which mainly covers the capital region, took 2 measures to respond to the current situation. One is providing resources for worship at home, and the other is coming up with a new lending system to help small churches continue supporting their pastors.
Part of the mission of the church and Christian witness. So when we say that this is the mission of the church and witness of the church, of course, we can see the practical application of how the churches in Asia have been responding, how the churches in Asia have been accompanying the vulnerable people and communities at this particular context.
The large part of the population being the informal sector, with 1 million street vendors and unorganized labor. For them all, the lockdown came as a life shock. It was a shattering experience for the churches, for the common man, parishioners, people everywhere, for every religion. But I must tell you that churches have been seized of the urgency of to play a role in this great country. And a small example I can give you. In my own home state, Kerala, they call the migrant workers our guest workers. Symbolically, that is very, very significant. And the government has evolved something called a moral economy package. Not just food, medicine, cash, etc., but also emotional support. Churches and national assemblies in CASA are all seized with the problem. In our church, the supreme head of our church, immediately after getting seized of the immediate problem, informed all the dioceses, all the parishes, all the parishioners to be actively participating in this alleviation program, especially for people who are coming back from other states, people who are going back to their native states in Kerala. This has been going on for 3-4 weeks now. Theological or not, is the issue of joblessness. This is staring into the eyes of the churches, governments, social organizations, NGOs everywhere. The migrants who are coming back to their native villages, they have no work. No work means no pay. Now, how far the government can help them is anybody's guess. But the churches everywhere have been challenged for their diaconical mission of the churches in this specific context of COVID-19. Now, coming back to CASA, CASA has already reached 20 lakh people in 5,700 villages in India. This is a big number. Within the span of 2-3 weeks, the CASA personnel has reached almost 6,000 villages, 20-25 lakh people. And CASA is working, as we've heard earlier, in 22 states, all because of the All India network the CASA enjoys today. And it has been very actively involved on 4 fronts. Number 1, relief work for migrants and daily laborers. This is one area CASA has been concentrating on. Number 2, measures for prevention and protection, providing for sanitation, disinfectant, mess, etc. Number 3, support for the marginalized communities. Now, those who suffer, whether it's a pandemic or flood or any calamity, those who suffer most are the poor people, women, children, those in the lowest strata of society. This is true even today. When we say stay at home, What is the future of people who have no home at all? How can you compel them? You go and sit in a room, they have no room. If 12 people, 13 people are huddled up in one room, laborers, where is the space for social distancing? This is a big issue today. So Gaza is trying to take care of such emergencies in this country. Marginalized communities are always marginalized. And the fourth thing, creating awareness among people. The poor villagers, they don't know the meaning of social distancing. How to sanitize their hands, how to keep away from crowds. When people crowd in railway stations to get back to their native villages, things are going haywire. So Gaza is, and as a first step, creating awareness among people as to how to keep themselves clean, how to wash their hands open with soap and water, how to keep distance when they come together, etc. So these areas have been now being handled with Gaza staff throughout India, from the north to south, from east to west. And the presence of Gaza is felt. Gaza is the assembly 27 Protestant and Orthodox churches in India. As the chair of Gaza, I'm very happy to tell you that with the participation of our overseas friends and local churches, whatever fund is available with us is being utilized.
We have here in the Philippines a faith-based organization that has been working together and in partnership, which would include the Catholics, the Evangelicals, and the Protestant councils. And it is through this platform that we begin to work together. We even issue statements like during the Lenten period, we called or issued a joint statement calling for compassionate service to the poor and comprehensive scientific medical solution from the government. Because when the government announced a lockdown on March 15, they just announced the lockdown. There were no provision for food. Almost took 2 to 3 weeks before food could be given out. And it was only towards the end of 1 month that testing has begun on a larger scale. And this is one of the ministries that we do. And as I've said earlier, there has been cooperation on the local level. It is good that in the Philippines, we have what we call the regional ecumenical councils. And so in the various localities, some of them have been working together in giving out of emergency relief aids. In cases where there are none, we have encouraged the local churches to do that on their own. So this is one way in which we have been doing that. We also have been engaging with the United Nations through WHO and OCHA. And we have been, especially at the early stages, been providing information that we got from WHO, for instance, on how to do preventive precautionary steps so that the virus would not be spread. We are also conducting with the faith-based organization in the Philippines something like this, sharing of information on the various response. We are planning to hold an online coordination as well, so that when there are efforts to provide relief operations, that we do not duplicate going to areas that some others are already responding to.
Roman Catholic churches in Asia have an organizational structure that can help promote a coordinated response to the crisis caused by this pandemic. The Episcopal Conference at the national level, the different dioceses, the parishes, the small communities, these are all structures that can be used for a coordinated response. Each country would have a caritas, and each diocese would be connected with that caritas and integrated into the structures. In addition, there are also congregations of religious who are involved in hospital work, education, and other specific works. One of the things that was done by Caritas was a survey was conducted to determine what are the actual needs of a society in each country and each locale, and to look at what are the available resources. One of the responses, service responses, has been to work for the protection of people in the community and preventing the spread of the virus. This would include providing face masks and sanitizers. They even began the work of making protective equipment by sewing face masks, making face shields, and one university was producing sanitizers. These would be made available to the frontliners and to the needy public. Another response that others have mentioned also would be that of awareness and an educational campaign about the prevention of the spread of the virus, such as hygiene practices and social distancing. There are places, however, particularly among the poor, where physical distancing is really almost impossible. And the lack of clean water in other places will hinder the need for the necessary hygienic practices. There are also responses in the area of food support for the most needy, the unemployed, the vulnerable, the marginalized. The most impacted by this situation of getting food are the homeless, the daily wage earners, the poor, the migrants, and the elderly. So to raise funds for this and collect foodstuffs for distribution was also part of this response. And then gathering and getting volunteers to help collect and distribute food that were needed. Again, this had to be done within the social distancing regulations and other restrictions. Food kitchens and distribution centers were set up in places of the greatest need. And these all had to be done while working together with the government and other groups working towards the same goals. Also looking forward, a recovery program and a food sustainability program will be needed to go into the future. The long-term social and economic development impacts are beginning, but they will become more evident. The crisis reveals the underlying humanitarian inequities and the inadequacies of the political economic system and the present healthcare systems. We do not know what the world will look like tomorrow, but we do know that it's our joint responsibility to build a future that is more just and more humane.
In our experience, this COVID-19, of course, has a very big impact to the life of the people. Economic life, daily life, and also the activities of those people. Not working, no income, no food in home. But I think, based on our faith, we need a self-confident. Of course, in our life, all problems, all sickness that happen to us will be temporary. This is temporary, but this temporary time, we need our togetherness to be hand in hand. We have the COVID-19 as of now, and it will go away later on. So now the problem, especially in our country, is how to make food available. How to make food available, because no income, no salary, because they are not working. So we call it with faith, food available in the home. F-A-I-T-H, faith available at home. I observe some of the churches in North Sumatra, they have their own, how do you call it, the special fund for crisis. So anytime the crisis, just like flood, tsunami, earthquake, and everything, they are ready because they have their own fund to be ready. So I think this is a good lesson also, I think, to other community to have a special fund for the crisis. As in our North Sumatra province, I'm really grateful and thankful to the church leaders. I see they really concerned and they can hand in hand to make this food available. We have togetherness with other faiths also, from Islam, from the Roman Catholic, the Buddhists, and the Hindus. That's why our relief, our help is not goes to the Christianity only, but also our brothers and sisters with different religions, like as Muslim. The real problem is food. Many people has no food to eat because they don't have money, they don't have salary, they don't work, they stay at home. 1875, this is the history of the Batak Church. This is the history of Nomensen, a missionary from Germany, coming to the Batak Church around 1875. At that time, there was a pandemic cholera. Many people died. After a very sickness condition. But Nomensen, this missionary, has a very creative way to handle the condition. He led the school building, church building, the house of missionaries to be the hospital, to take care of the people infected by the virus. I think the church also should change their mind. The church building should be a place to take care of the people. The house of missionaries, the house of the pastor, the compound of the churches should be ready to collect the people who is in need. Not only for the Christian, but different religious, of course. I thank also the government because they help the people. The President Joko Widodo shared the national budget with a very big number to help the people, to help the people in need. The problem is the task force to share so that this aid, this help will be reached to the correct person.
Communities working together. It's sometimes they are working in the metropolitan cities. We had seen this, but in rural areas or less developed areas of the country, they are not working. Like the NGOs who's been working for interfaith, we are not seeing them working in remote areas. Small chunks are doing this, like the local communities are getting together Like some of the young fellows, Muslim young fellows has come to me and they says that bishops are, we want to work together for all the communities, for Christians and for Hindus and Muslims. So on the small chunks, the people as in their own communities are working together. But the NGOs and the workers who have been working for interfaith, they are not seen in the remote areas. Yes, I had seen some people in metropolitan cities. There are two problems which church has to face. One thing is when its pandemic has come in the Pakistan, the EAD problem is erased. That is the banks being closed for church releasing their church funds because they are not being registered with Economic Affairs Division. So then the church has organized and asked them, and then they had given a relief for 6 months. So for church, they are tackling church as NGOs. So that is making a problem to move ahead and helping in our areas. So when we are looking for NGOs, so there is a very little work from NGOs in the remote areas, like in my area, South Punjab. It's very small thing. But when we talk about the government is working with their selected people. You know, there is no election in Pakistan, and they select our representatives from their parties. So, but because when they serve the help, they cater their own constituency or the cities in which they live. And where there is no person who has been from that community, they suffers. And when I have a suggestion with the government that the government should support the religious communities or religious minorities by if it's come to the church, because church has been registered, all churches been registered with the government. So if they go directly to the church, then that could be a thing. Again, from the government level, there is no discrimination, but when it's come to the local bodies, so they ignore minorities. We have a lot of stories when they have ignored it when it's come to the people. And in my constituencies, where I have voted for my MNA and my MPA, who are sitting, I had tried to call them, but it's again, there is no response. When I ask, there is the problem of not only the hunger, the joblessness, but there is also the problem of psychological problems. When the leaders must be there, listening your problems, not solving it, at least listening the problem. So this is the problem that is being arose in my area.
There is a saying in Armenian, it goes like this: whenever people are in difficulty, in hard time, they are coming closer and closer to each other. Now, the COVID-19 has brought us from all the parts of the world nearer and nearer, and because we are faced by the same almost problems. The difficulties are part and parcel of our daily life. But our Christian faith, I believe, is always strengthening us, and God is with us with sometimes without our knowing. He is with us, He is silently strengthening us and keeping us strong in our commitment as church members. I believe that we as Christians, we are called upon to face the difficulties, the sufferings with patience and hope, because hope will strengthen us and will keep us strong and strong.
We all observe that the life of the people as of now is in a very difficult condition. In a very difficult condition. So the churches also should think of, after this, what condition will be? After this COVID-19, what happened to the people in need? To the workers, to the student, to the farmer, the fisherman, and everything. So the way to serve the people also should be changed by the church. We should go out, not in the pulpit anymore, at least to empower the people in their own life. Maybe home industry or everything. The second one, I think the churches also should voice strongly to the government to be very strict on the distribution of the help to the people, because this is a very big number. To be strict from the government until to the village, so that the help will be reach the correct people.
The world is not going to be the same. This is what we think about the post-pandemic scenario. At the same time, let all the churches around the states take it as a challenge. This is a challenge thrown to the churches by God. And at the same time, as you mentioned rightly, this is not the time to point accusing fingers at anyone. Not saying this is a China virus, this is a Russia virus, nothing like that. Or somebody taking a passage from the prophet, say, this is getting fulfilled today. This is all nonsense. Whatever God wants will happen. So let us give the message of hope to our people. And for the churches, basically their job is prayer and work and service. I would say the churches should start living simple. This is a message I would like to pass to everybody. Let us say goodbye to all the pomp and luxury of the churches. Maybe this is a time for the churches to introspect, to cleanse themselves, to reorient their priorities and decisions. Let us do that, because the problem of unemployment is too big. It is going to be too big, not just in India, everywhere, not just in Asia, everywhere. Let the churches come together, that all the bureaucrats, the scholars, the theologians, the state, everybody come together and discuss about it. How to meet this problem of poverty, of unemployment, of people losing hope. What is the role of the church in this face of the earth? It is to give people hope for life, that with Christ we will win. We will win. I won't take more time, but I want to tell you that let us assure our people, we shall overcome. With the help of God, we shall overcome. CCA will help us. God will help us. Work out of churches will be with us. We shall overcome.
I think so many of us are now trying to adapt to a new normal way of spiritual life using computers and smartphones. But how about small churches in local cities? I reached out to my pastor in the northern part of the country for a comment. When it comes to online ministry, he said, that is fine with that. But the gap occasioned between people by virtue of the generations, economic conditions, and social and geographical locations should be bridged, because we should not isolate those people or make them feel marginalized. In conclusion, I'd like to say that online ministry is effective, but it's not the perfect solution because not readily available to everyone. Such digital divide creates a wall between us. Since Christ spoke down the dividing wall, I think we must work together to break down any barriers that attempt to divide us and bring everybody on board.
To try to find new ways in which we could express our faith, including those of the sacrament in times like these. What I would see happening if we go back to when in a post-COVID situation is that most likely many will return to what they have been doing in the past. But I feel that that is not sufficient. That as Archbishop Simarmata said earlier, it is time for the church to re-examine how it does its ministry and mission, and not so much concentrated on the four walls of the church, but go out really and be with people who are in need, such as has been done by the early church, both in Acts chapter 2 and Acts chapter 4, in which they were mindful of the communities and the needs around them. And I feel that that is one of the message that this pandemic might give to us, for us to be more mindful and be more caring and compassionate to communities around us, and not only to our fellow believers.
What we are experiencing now and what we were trying to listen during these 2 hours presentations by different panelists, the crucial conditions which we are currently collectively undergoing is also a reminder to all of us, the humankind, to reflect about the fragile nature of our life. So the care for all God's creation in God's oikos is, we all know the fact that integrally linked to the survival and well-being of all creation. So this also reminds us of the role of the church as a caring community, which exists to provide love and support to people who are struggling with life's challenges. So we will continue our journey, and at the same time we will continue to accompany the vulnerable communities. And also this is an occasion for us to remember, and also it reminds us about the ultimate vulnerability of the entire cosmos. So our world needs prayers, and our fellow human beings, all of us need cure and healing, especially in the time of this kind of a crisis situation. So it is in this context that CCA is trying to create some ripples by providing this platform for us to reflect in a collective way. As you know that the Christian Conference of Asia, this year the Asia Sunday will be observing based on the theme, God heal us as we are vulnerable. In fact, the original theme was entirely different. While we were preparing the liturgy, that we decided that it would be more appropriate to address this particular concern and issue that was emerging at the time. So although the Asia Sunday will be observed on 24th May, we have encouraged CCA member constituencies to use this liturgy that has been already circulated and that has already been shared with all its member constituencies. We are encouraging all member churches and councils to use this liturgy mainly to use this for our prayers and also to express our faith and our solidarity. I take this opportunity to thank all our panelists and all others, those who have found your valuable time to be part of this virtual conference session. We appreciate very much your time and your energy and your commitment to be part of this discussion. We look forward to your continued support, encouragements, and accompaniments as we move forward. Thank you very much, friends. We look forward to seeing you again next week.